Welcome back to the journey, everybody. Today I'm going to take you through a short workout. It's what I call my short stack of movements. We'll kind of take you through what that looks like. I usually do this workout after work. So today it's Sunday. We're going to do something slightly different in terms of rehab, but ultimately this will be a good first step into seeing kind of what movements I'm doing and how to rehab my body. So the workout, at the first, a little bit of rehab, and then I have some positions that I use for range of motion, and then we go into some of my aesthetics building. I'm trying to make my shoulders a little bigger, work on my abdominals, and then we have the legs in there at the end because we want to make this a well-rounded program. That's my short stack. We'll take you through rehab, range of motion, shoulders, abs, and legs. Let's jump right in. So we're going to start with some soft tissue work. Now, when I do this workout, usually I am just getting off work. So I like to use a foam roller or some kind of soft tissue work. I've been standing all day, so my muscles are ready for a massage. Yesterday, I was at the climbing gym doing a climbing sesh, so I'm going to focus on my forearms, but also take you through kind of something I picked up from Kelly Starrett. I'm just gonna put my forearm down, apply some pressure, and kind of work through the flexor group, the wrist flexor group that you use a lot when you're climbing grip and holds. When you soft tissue work, when you do some of this, you're looking for any kind of sensation that feels like, yeah, that hurts quite a bit, or that feels good, perhaps. And then what you can do is you can do some contractions, flex that muscle. You can kind of spin on that spot, or you can even roll against the grain, is what I call it, your muscles. And you can also always do the with the grain motion. In terms of how long, some people say 10 reps. I'd say a couple minutes, a minute or two on each side. And we'll get into how soft tissue work can help us move better, ultimately, with the dowel here. Now, Kelly Starrett's paradigm I really like because he has these movement archetypes. And these are things we commonly do in workouts like the squat, the deadlift, the overhead press, various carries. So all these things, like, you have to be able to get into that position and move through. And if you don't have the range of motion, you just can't. You have to compensate some way. So it's always a test, retest. We can jump into that now. So I'm going to use a dowel rod here. It's always a test, retest. So the test we're going to do is, can I overhead press without doing a whole lot of thoracic extension? So I'm going to try and break the bar with my shoulders, externally rotate, try and keep my thoracic spine nice and straight. And I'm going to press the bar overhead. Now, we should probably be able to get our arms back far enough that we can see our ears, and that's why I'm showing you this, because most of the time I can't. I'm not very good at this. One of my compensations, got a lot of mobility in my upper back, so I can compensate for that. So all in all, when I do my warm-up kind of soft tissue work for my day-to-day workout, when I typically do this, I'll do 5-10 minutes of massage. I'd kind of just like laying on the floor, taking a break, honestly. And then I jump into my workouts, and I do it at a circuit series. So if you want to follow along at home, we're going to do one set of each exercise and then start back from the top. And I'll take you through kind of the sensations that I'm feeling, and we'll kind of go from there. So we're going to start with pike push-ups on the box. You can do regular push-ups, or you can just put your feet on the floor. And then we're going to do some reverse flies with our dumbbells here. We're going to roll next into hollow holds and planks. We've got the timer here. We're going to see how long we can hold. I don't really set a particular time. I know I can do a minute pretty easily, so that's always the goal. But if we don't hit that mark every time with good form, that's okay too. And then we've round out with squats and deadlifts. The last bit of my rehab are these kind of range of motion movements that I do. I know that my hip flexors are really tight from sitting in school a lot, and then also my lats. And I think that's a major contributor into why my overhead press is not quite where I want it to be. So before we jump into our workouts, we're just going to spend some time kind of stretching those things that are really tight. Now, for me, the major muscle that I think contributes to my hips being tight is the rectus femoris, and it goes from your hip all the way down to the knee, and it actually absorbs your kneecap. So this muscle crosses both the hip and the knee joint. So when you get a good stretch and try to flex both sides, the hip and the knee, you're going to feel that a lot more versus if you were here taking the knee all the way out of it. I feel that a lot less than when I'm down here. Okay, so we're just kind of moving through this position. Feel it a lot with my knee kind of going out. You just use that as feedback, right? You know, if it feels more tight in that position, maybe you work on that position a little more. Okay, and then we switch sides. Same thing on this side. When I push my knee out to the side, definitely feel more of that stretch. Now, normally I'd also hold like a dead hang, you might call it, or just a pull-up position. But instead, we're just going to do some reps of overhead, trying to keep our core contracted to keep our rib cage down and not extending. Now, programming reps for all these calisthenic movements, I mentioned earlier, we want to do these in good form with our core stuff. So once we start fatiguing out, that's when we know it's time to move on. Moving into our pike push-ups here. I'm doing this position because it's similar to our overhead press, and I'm trying to kind of build up my shoulders. So here I'm really trying to keep my fingers activated to support my wrist, and then also playing around with internal and external rotation. You'll notice that when you fully externally rotate your shoulders, you're going to feel it more in your triceps. Whereas when I try and internally rotate, I feel it more in my upper traps and my biceps. Triceps too, of course, because that's the major pusher here. And then we move on. Grab our dumbbells for our reverse flies. I'm going to give a hold. These are just 10 pounds. I'm trying to do this workout every day, so ultimately it's not lift as heavy as you can. It's more of a consistency type thing. I'm giving a pause at the top because I really want to squeeze and activate that rear delt. That's the purpose of this exercise. Once I feel that fatigue, I like to do 1 or 2 more reps. See if we can do that in good form, and then we move on again. Moving into our hollow holds, want to make sure that our low back is supported. So we're going to turn that pelvis posterior, roll it back, activate our abdominals, and then we're going to try and breathe through this movement. I'm also going to try and chin tuck here to get a little neck work. You can do what you fancy with your hands and feet. I kind of like to keep them active. Gives a full body sensation. Yeah, and we're starting to lose form there. We're moving into a plank variation. Taking an elbow plank for this rep. And I like to kind of play around with what muscles I'm utilizing. You'll find that if you keep everything rigid from your glutes to your hands all the way to your head, you're going to find that your plank time increases quite a bit, because this movement is basically trying to keep your body as rigid as possible. So when you activate all of your muscles, you're going to find that it's a lot easier to do for time than just trying to keep your core active. Next and last two movements, we're going to do an ass to grass goblet squat and a deadlift. So I'm going to take my kettlebell here in a goblet fashion, keep my core tight, push my knees out as I go down to the bottom, and return it. Trying to keep that torque, externally rotating my hips in the bottom and the top of the movement. You can play around with where you put the weight. Sometimes I'll reach it out in front as I go down, get a little more shoulder involvement. You can try to pinch the shoulder blades back as you go down. You can try and roll them forward. Last, our deadlift. I'm actually trying to pull the kettlebell apart as I go down. It really engages that rear delt. Rhomboids back there, hitting everything in the posterior chain, shoulders, hamstrings, glutes. Still trying to keep my feet pulling the floor apart. Push our knees out as well. It just helps our torque. Having our feet stay connected to our hips. And then moving on up with our abdominals contracted to our weight, holding the load at the top. A couple more here. All right, that concludes set one. A lot of times I'll do just 2 sets after a work day, and that usually is a pretty good workout. So we'll give ourselves a minute rest here, and then we'll jump into our last set. I think it really is important for a workout to integrate some kind of rehab. If you're sitting at a desk for the majority of your day, the lunge position will be great just to kind of get out of that movement pattern. If you're standing like me, I think your soft tissue work is great. That allows your muscles to relax, start the recovery process for the next day. Just trying to bring a greater variety of movements to what you normally do. All right, we're gonna get back into our pike push-up position. Feet on the box or feet on the floor, following on home. Trying to keep our torso as upright as possible. Fingers active. Shoulders active. Make sure you're still breathing as your head is down. All right. Got about 11 on that set. It usually falls between 10 and 20 for me, depending on the exercise. Going into our rear flies, bent over. Again, pausing at the top with a second or two hold. Trying to really engage those rear delts. Check in with where your head is. You don't want it to be jutted out far forward. Try and bring it back in line with your spine. Chin tuck, and hold it there as you move. One more. All right, back to hollow holds. Hollow holds, then plank. See how long we can get this time. Posterior pelvic tilt, flatten that back out. Activate our abdominals. Feet are going up. Start our timer. This time I'm going to point feet and hands. Feet are cramping a bit. Hang in there, fam. Keep that core going. If you're losing it, you can bring your knees into a more tabletop position. That shortens your lever, makes your abs work a little less hard to hold that position. Now I'm starting to lose it. About 47 seconds. Next, we're going to take a high plank, and we're going to move a little bit with some weight shifts. So here, we're not so rigid like we were last time. We're trying to make this a little more of an active pose. For you yogis out there, you can come to the tops of your feet. Still trying to keep our fingers active. Support that wrist. You can do some retraction, protraction of the shoulder blades. Create some control in that shoulder girdle. If you need, you can fall out, give yourself a few seconds rest, come back in, try and make it 5 more seconds. That's a minute. Last 2 legs. We're gonna go goblet squat. Here we go. Feeling a little more adductor as I really push my knees out on this set. That's okay. Keep breathing through, fam. We're almost there. Reset our feet. They're sliding outward. Two more. All right. Lastly, our deadlift. Keeping our shoulders back. Hip hinge and push those legs, hips back behind you. Very similar to the start position of a kettlebell swing. If you're familiar with that movement, just pushing the hips back towards the back wall, keeping our feet engaged, keeping our hips pushing out, external rotators engaged. 2 more. All right. Good job, fam. Hey, that was a good workout. So that's the short stack. Beginning with rehab, moving to some positions to take you out of your daily positions that you're in a lot of the times. And then arms, abs, and legs. Quick 6 movement series to really get you going. You can tell I'm a little out of breath here. Now, we could do a little cool down if we wanted to. Feeling a little bit in the biceps and in the triceps. So static stretching, we can do that at the end. We don't usually want to do static stretching at the beginning of a workout because what we're doing is we're actually pulling apart the muscle's functional unit, those myosin and actin heads, and they are, if you can imagine, like a comb, 2 combs sitting into each other, and when it does a power stroke, they are going to pull each other, and that's what creates that muscle contraction. Now, what happens when we statically stretch is we pull those functional units apart so they're not optimally in line with each other to create that power stroke, and it decreases our force output. And so when we're doing something athletic, when we're doing some kind of workout, decreasing our force output is really the last thing that we want to do. So if we're going to do some kind of stretching, we want to do more like a dynamic stretch where we pull kind of at a short time period, not 30 seconds, where what we're doing at the end to cool down. We go overhead, try and keep that chest up. For me, I feel a lot of tension in my abdominals because I'm trying to keep my rib cage again from overextending in this position. Stretch whatever you need. Maybe it's hamstrings, maybe it's quad. Take that time, at least 30 seconds, to do a nice static stretch. And that's the end of our short stack workout. Thank you all again for stopping by and spending some time with me, and we'll see you all in the next video.